On the afternoon of September 27th, 1956, a 13-year-old boy named Neary Morgan was walking with his two younger brothers through a desert in South Australia called Mrballen. Neary and his brothers were members of an isolated Aboriginal tribe called the Martu, and they were out to hunt kangaroos for their family. They had been tracking this particular group of kangaroos, and every time the brothers got ready to strike, the kangaroos would take off. This group of kangaroos stopped at a watering hole, which was just a few dozen yards away from them. The brothers knew this was their chance. These kangaroos were going to stay here long enough that they could strike. They got down in the brush and began advancing on the kangaroos. After only taking a few steps, they heard this loud rumbling sound off in the distance. The sky suddenly was illuminated impossibly bright to the point where Neary is shielding his eyes to just see what's going on. This extremely hot gust of wind came blasting through and knocked the brothers onto the ground, totally disorienting them. And then from the ground, Neary kind of turns his head and he happens to look in the direction where the kangaroos were. Then he sees them literally floating in the air, coming right over to him and then dropping on the ground. And then a moment later, it was like everything just went back to normal. Except now they're looking at this bounty right in front of them, all these kangaroos, and they're thinking, what's just happened here was a gift from God. And so eventually, Neary and his brothers began lifting up these kangaroos and carrying as many as they could back to their tribe. That night, the tribe had this big celebration and they ate all this kangaroo meat. I mean, it was incredible. But then the next day, when the tribe woke up, everybody who had eaten any of that kangaroo was violently sick. Vomiting, rashes all over their body, aches, pain, and over the next few days, some people did recover, but a lot of others did not. And soon, people from this tribe began dying. And so naturally, Neary and the other members of the tribe did make the connection that very likely whatever was happening here was tied to consuming that kangaroo meat. This whole event remained a mystery until 11 years later, when Neary was 24 years old. It would turn out all those dead kangaroos were not the result of God giving them a gift. Instead, the reason that happened was because of a big scientific experiment that was conducted in Mrballen in total secrecy. The British government was testing nuclear bombs. Neary and his brothers had been a few kilometers away from a detonation site, and where they were positioned was right at that perfect separation point. Neary and brothers just barely safe, kangaroos just barely in the lethal zone. And the meat was not only devastated from the blast, but it was also littered with radiation. The members of the tribe who ate the kangaroo meat immediately got radiation sickness and began to die. An unknown number of people died from these nuclear bomb tests, and it would take 11 years before the British government would come in and begin cleaning up the nuclear waste. The Australian government ultimately paid $13.5 million in compensation to Aboriginal tribes that were affected by these tests. As for Neary, he survived, and today he's actually in his 80s, and he continues to tell his story to younger generations.